They're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Spirit Bus 33 fam, welcome. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Episode 39 coming your way. So much gratitude. Appreciate you having this earth experience, same time as me. Let's just get right in. As always, I really like to start off with taking a couple moments and just doing a little bit of a protective, circle around us before we get started, before we start chilling together. And there's a lot of intention behind doing that every single time, which I'll tap into a little bit later in this episode. But for me, as you know, it's the color of the sun, the orange, the yellow. I invite you to think about your own colors of protection, your own version of doing this, but let's just envision a protective circle around everyone that comes into this space together, everyone that is listening to Spirit Boss 33 fam, everyone that turns it on, even if it's just for a few moments. A protective circle around them, around you, around me. And then it extends out to everyone we love, our friends, our fam. Just kind of feel that. And then send it out in a huge way into the collective, reaching up into the quantum field, protecting everyone, sending love out to everyone, opening up everyone for the ability to love and show love and be loving awareness. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And if you need to do it after, if you need to listen and then pause and do it, but I really encourage this practice. The more that I research, the more that I study, I feel like something, not exactly the way that I'm doing it. Of course, it's your reality, make it fit for your reality. But I think there is a lot of power to intention and visualization. So fam, get grounded, get cozy, get centered, grab yourself a glass of water or your favorite beverage. Make sure that you're cozy, you got socks on, you need a blanket. Let's get right into this episode number 39. This one threw me for a loop. It's a totally different approach for this episode. Well, it just kind of, as I was researching, as I do in this certain way, it just kind of hit me with this personal curveball. And instead of scrapping everything and having another, shot at it, or just saying, I'm not going to do it for this week, I thought I would just kind of share how it unfolded, tell a little story, like just kind of be pretty like authentic about, how this all unfolded. And hopefully there's something in this episode for you. Yeah. So for those of you that have been following me, since episode 1, first of all, use a homie. Thank you, for coming on this journey all the way from episode 1. I'm going to guess that there's not too many of you out there. In fact, if you feel aligned and you have been taking this journey since episode 1, leave a comment. I would love to know who you are. I would love to have some kind of visual, with that. But for those of you that have been taking this journey since episode 1, you know that I wasn't even planning on starting my podcast yet. Like, it had been in the energetic field for probably a few years, I would say, maybe even longer, where I started speaking out loud to people around me that I was going to do a podcast at some point, because that's how I really show up with manifesting. Is I know what I want to do. I start speaking it out loud in safe spaces, or spaces where I feel like my energy is very centered or grounded. And then I start taking steps to follow through. So I knew it was coming. Like, I knew that I was going to do one, but I was really thinking that I had a lot more prep. I was going to learn what platforms were the best, microphones. I was going to really study, graphics, like all of these things. But, they remember from episode 1, like, my spirit team, my guidance showed up in a really big way and was like, you think you're in control, but you're starting this today. And I had no really clue what I was doing. In fact, for those of you that have followed through, you know that the audio was, wasn't grand there for a while. But, the right people are tuned in. Yeah. And I'm grateful, because I think I would have just kept being stuck in that prep of like, oh, I'm not, as well versed with this, or, oh, there's this I need to do, or what about, and I would have just been listening to other people's opinions and, kind of going, too far. Like I say, don't go into the rabbit holes, but I would have fallen into rabbit holes of what you need to do to be a podcaster instead of just let's be a podcaster. So I continue to get, my topics and what I talk about, I continue to get it in a very similar way, as, from source, from my spirit team, a download, something that comes to me, my intuition. And so for this week, I started paying attention as it was getting closer to doing the episode. I started paying attention, like, what keeps coming into my reality? Where are the synchronicities? What do I need to pay attention to? And the first thing that I noticed was fog. And it wasn't just people speaking about fog, it was that too, but it was also physically in my reality. As there were so many days straight of not only, cloudy skies. I mean, I live literally, for some definition, in the middle of nowhere, in the woods, and there's pretty intense winters. So I'm not, it's not uncommon to, for it to be cloudy, but this was different. This is where you can't even see the definition of the clouds above you. It's just hazy, and it just kind of, it blocks your line of sight. And I mean, maybe it's always been this way. That is a possibility, that I just started having fog come into my reality through different people's experiences. And then now I'm noticing, like, wow, this does seem unusual. And, perhaps it's been this way. But nevertheless, I started seeing fog in my physical reality and people on different social media platforms and different search engines talking about fog. So now remember, there's a lot of different realities going on at once here, okay? So if you're the type that you like to argue over what reality is accurate, my frequency, my radio channel, my link to, the synergic, the quantum, it may not be for you, because I like to find bits and pieces of truths in many different realities, and I like to peer in. I'm kind of a connoisseur of realities, so to speak. Okay, so back to the fog. So there are some realities out there that are suggesting or kind of noticing that larger areas, perhaps the entire country, with some people's reporting, or many parts of the world, is covered by this like really dense fog. Okay. And yes, I know that there are many different scientific, you know, explanations. But some people are leaning into like feeling concerned about it, right? And so, as I do, when these things come to my awareness, as I peer into that rabbit hole, I don't fall in. I try really hard to not fall in, just a little peek, and as I was like peering in, and I don't know if you're going to understand all of this, but as I was peering in, there was these Dior bags. There was strange mold, growing on decaying matter that the fog touched. And then that went to this 1952 Great Smog of London. And then I was peering into smart dust. And then, boom, there was this Operation Sea Spray. And so then so there I'm going through this process and I'm like, where is this taking me? And I don't know if this is going to work. And, I know that our government, and I'm going to, from here on out, and, going to use the word plunderbund, unless I'm directed in some other way, but that will be the alias as of today. To not give my creative platform, my expression blocked by the mods. Uh, but I knew that there was some shady stuff in the past, and this isn't just like, sitting and just thinking, oh my gosh, nefarious things. I mean, these are actually things that like I have learned, in through education, through the degree I have. I mean, as like an advocate, or, like a social worker in part of my reality, there's things that, that the plunderbund, has done that is extremely messed up, extremely. So I had never heard of Operation Sea Spray. And this was just like, you don't even have to dig for this. Like, this is just type it in, boom, mainstream sort. You don't even have to try to go to any depths, to get there. And then that was like reading about that. And then that led me to more and more just kind of unethical, like, experiments, releasing chemicals in the US to unknowing citizens just like me and you. So then as I'm going through, I'm like, oh, this is like more and more clear, why there is such a distrust, why people, are having like a really hard time, like, believing the plunderbund, and wanting to follow their recommendations. Because the research, it went, to human radiation experiments, injected experiments, surgical experiments, mind altering experiments, and like who was this? So is part of the plunderbund, is the CDC, the CIA, the US military, and so then it kind of took a little bit of a turn, and 1896, it was hopping all over from different years to different years. Dr. Wentworth, wow, there was a lot of children without their parents knowing, in these experimental, spinal taps. And then where it started getting very personal is all the experiments that were done, on individuals with mental illness. And remember, it was a lot different, back in the mid 1900s, is that there were a lot of institutions that housed, mentally ill people who are able to live independently today because of how far, we have come in society. But there was a lot of people institutionalized and not given treatment, and there were some very horrible things done, to, those very vulnerable, forgotten, people that were people's family members. And that's where it hit home. I can even feel like a little bit of a quiver in, in my voice speaking this out because it is very personal for me. It was personal for me because, my maternal grandmother was in and out of those, institutions during that time frame. And not only the direct, relationship, with having a grandmother, diagnosed with a severe form of schizophrenia, it was the impact, that it had on my entire family and honestly continues to have an impact on my family, which now being a therapist that, is more and more specializing, in the impact of trauma is I can see, you know, how that infected, not only, my mom, but her siblings and, other family members. But from a really young age, this was my reality of having, a grandmother with this very, serious mental illness. Of course, I had no idea growing up that anything, you know, nefarious or unethical or, horrific like that could happen to anyone under the care, of, government funded, sorry, plunderbund funded, uh, mental health facilities. Now, I don't have proof that, she was a victim of that. I don't have paperwork, I don't have, proof of it, but I do intuitively. I feel it. I felt it as soon as I started researching this was it became, so known to me. And I don't know the degree of it, but I can just feel that she had some really hard experiences. And my heart, really aches for her. Her schizophrenia, like I said, was, extremely severe to where, she wasn't able to live independently. And before she passed away, like she was in a locked facility, for her safety and really for others too. What I remember from visiting her was that, yeah, she was just the sweetest. And then it would just take a turn and there would be this intense paranoia. The mailman, the plunderbund, this intense paranoia, and these claims of these very horrible things that had happened to her while under, somebody's care. But it sounded so outrageous. Do you know what I mean? Like the things that she said sounded so far out there that they were, unbelievable. And perhaps maybe what she was reporting wasn't exactly what was happening, but it really does in hindsight, is that it does sound, like there were things happening that she just didn't have the ability to to tell us. So my heart was, really heavy when I was preparing for this episode. And I realized, just how powerful fear is. I mean, her fear was so incredibly powerful. Her paranoia, her fear that it created a reality in which she couldn't even live independently. I mean, she had to have 24/7 care. And I know, when I think about my own trauma responses, my own PTSD, on how fear can creep in and it can bring about this intense hypervigilance that you can start connecting things that appear to be real. You can see the bridge to fully being embraced by the fear and living in a reality that may not even be real to anyone else, but it's real to you while you're living it. So I realized, like, while there is this grotesque, horrific, like disgusting side to this human experience, and a lot of it tied to the plunderbund. And while there's so much wrong with that, and there's so many hurt people that are just hurting people, it's that, like, we can't live in that full time. Like, our nervous systems, I believe, can't handle it. At least without, having some, like, serious impact, either physically, or mentally. So I think it's so important that we create our own sunshine amongst the fog. Now, this is this is not me saying that I'm gonna stop peering in to, like, rabbit holes, because I have this side of me that, like, is this, like, whistleblower, this advocate, this, like, change agent, like, I want to elevate, I wanna rage against the machine, But I know that it has to be done with the balance, the art form, to not be completely swallowed by it. So this mix, this duality, it's an interesting one while I prepared for episodes, and so I try to keep the really good balance, of not only peering in and sharing that, but then also, leaning in to these authors that, to these people that have this just amazing energy and words to pair with it. And what I do is I pick up a book intuitively and I read a few pages and I check with my guides, my intuition, to see if it needs to be incorporated or if it's just meant for me to digest, and I do the work right then and there. So for today, Sanaya Roman, Personal Power Through Awareness, she says, if in any way your fear... Okay, wait, hold on, let me restart. If in any way you fear people in a position of authority or power over you, send them love. And literally that is the book that I picked after, kind of prepping that this is what I was going to do. Okay, here, let me do that next step. And then that's it. That comes up just so powerful. Yeah. It will help stop any power struggles and attune you to a higher part of your being where miracles and love are available, she says. So I just love that because, in this, like, state of loving awareness, a little Ram Dass dipped in there, we can come from, like, this more grounded, centered state of being. In a state of fear, we can make these moves, like, with this impulsivity. So, like, sending love out does not mean a doormat, does not mean, like, put your head in the sand, don't pay attention to what's going on. It does not mean to follow unethical orders. It's a warrior stance. It's a protect your energy stance. It is a vibe. It is a frequency. It is a knowing that what we speak, share, and create directly creates this reality. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., Mastery of Self, shares, as our shared knowledge and experience mingle together, we co-create the dream of the planet, which is the combination of every single being in the world's personal dream. So then we create what we create, and that is the resistance. Everything that we create is the resistance to the fear, is the resistance to, the grotesque, the evil, the things that we see out there. And there's many of us that are the antidote. I love that song, Imagine, by John Lennon. If you have time, pause and listen. If we all came together, if we all leaned in, I understand that there's many that just think that that's like a pipe dream, a utopia type of thing. But I think that we do have the power to shift this reality. and to honor those like pioneers before us, is that I continue to practice connecting to that field, turning the knob, turning the channel to 33.3, playing the frequency with those that have ears to be able to hear it. Because like Jacobo Grinsberg, synergic theory, where he shares that consciousness is an active force that influences the field and in turn is influenced by it. That the human mind has the ability to alter this field and with that influence physical reality. So I invite you, Spirit Bus fam, let's like turn on our antenna. Let's use our antennas, our gifts, and let's like transform this reality. So if you didn't already do the protective circle visualization, like I invite you to sit and after this, like envision protecting circle around you, your loved ones, humanity. Meditate, do your practices, your mind, body, belief system practices, whatever those are to you. Look for the synchronicities, open yourself up to the magical. And maybe I owe a lot to my grandma, because maybe I'm not afraid. Maybe her living in a completely alternate reality, is I'm not as fearful to kind of like keep stepping towards, these different lines of thinking, with the strength of, the warriors that came before me. And then also, the family members that endured a lot of, the chaos, the scary parts, that came with living with someone with such a severe mental illness. But we have to look outside the box here to be able to heal ourselves and to help ripple out that healing energy to others around us. And I also have to give a little shout out because today is, would have been my Earth Father's level up day, as I call it, or day of birth, if he was still having this human experience. And he passed away in 2012 in December, 2 days before my brother. So it's a little bit of a ride going through the holidays for me. And then today, kind of really being vulnerable and talking about, my grandmother. And then on this day, is a very powerful healing experience for me. So I appreciate those of you that are still here listening. I'm going to get this reading going to close on out. Okay, first card, intensity. Oh, we've gotten this card a lot on the TikTok lives. Yes, and I would love for you to join me too if you're listening, on a TikTok live, if you are part of the TikTok fam. I believe it is at joyful, Joyful, Rain, Raine 33. And this intensity card has come up before. And so just say first, this earth experience is a wild ride. It is wild. It can be described as intense. It takes some warrior energy to be having this earth experience. We can use the intensity. We can use these intense emotions. We can use our own intensity, our creative, process to really help create our own reality. I used to see this card and, really be working on, slowing the intensity down and trying to get more present, more grounded. And then when I was, drew this card a few times on the live, there were some comments and some feedback of, the power within intensity, that it's a very positive, card, and to, maybe not slow down, but know how to harness, that intensity, know how to harness our ability to transform, to manifest, to create. The second card is guidance. I'm 100% knowing that we're not alone. Is like I have had enough happen to me that there's no second guess to me. I have done the research on different possibilities of what I'm experiencing, and it happens too much to just be coincidental, to just be a pattern. I'm guided. And I believe that we all have the ability to step in to that guidance as well. And it may look different for each and every one of us. But for me, when I am very mindful and paying attention and looking for it, it's there. So I invite you to think about what that means for you, and to allow yourself space for that guidance to come in, whether that be meditation or just sitting still or praying or asking for guidance. Last card, ordinariness. And I feel like this card is just so beautifully put in here for this episode, because it's like, with all of the stuff going on, with all of the plunderbund and all of the things going on, and then trying to harness our own power and, and connect to the quantum field and all of these spiritual, mystical, amazing things here, our belief system, our connection to source, all of that is also, remember, remember, fam, we're having an earth experience. So let's really work on finding some joy in the ordinary of this experience. Let's take a walk and let's stop and put our hand on a tree and feel the bark, and look at the leaves on the ground, or perhaps maybe you're in a place where the leaves are not on the ground, but the butterfly that goes by, the shape of when there's real clouds, the little tiny ordinary things all around us. I mean, it's just so beautifully, it's a beautiful landscape everywhere we go. Even if you're in a big city, is to marvel at some of those old buildings and wonder, why don't we make those anymore? Why don't all the buildings look like those old buildings? They're so beautiful. So just really leaning in to appreciating the ordinariness. And I appreciate you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for tuning in. Your spiritual beings having a human experience.